Buying a camera is a huge investment, whether you're a beginner, hobbyist, or even a professional. Okay, definitely when you're a professional. So when it comes to parting ways with your cash, it can be really hard to know exactly which option is the best to go for without, getting swept up by all the marketing hype. So consider this video a virtual hand-holding experience where I'm going to show you some of the common mistakes I see a lot of people making so that you can hopefully avoid them for yourself and make sure you're getting the right gear for your needs. And in the process, hopefully you'll save a bunch of cash. Okay, so we're going to start with a big one, and that's camera brand bias. A super common misconception in the world of photography is that there are only a handful of brands that are totally superior to all of the other camera brands, and if you don't follow the crowd and buy into one of these very popular systems, you're clearly just a misguided fool who really doesn't know what they're talking about. Well, I'm here to tell you that after testing many cameras over the best part of 15 years and owning multiple camera brands myself, that is total bullshit.
Watch your profanity.
These days, by and large, there really aren't any outright bad camera manufacturers, and equally, there really aren't any brands that make all of their cameras 100% perfect. All of them have their pros and cons. So my advice is do not pick a camera solely based on what's the most popular brand at that time. Instead, pick a camera based on what that ecosystem can offer you, because your needs and preferences are going to be totally different to everyone else's, including mine. But if you have absolutely no idea as to which brands you should even start looking at, then my advice is to simply visit a local camera store and try out a few different brands and camera models for yourself. The more cameras you can try, the better. Now, when you do this, you kind of have to stay a little bit brand agnostic here, because you just need to figure out which camera feels right in your hands based on first impressions and make notes on the ones you immediately like and dislike, and ideally the reasons why. It might sound a bit silly, but even the layout of buttons and the menu system and even the grip size can make a huge difference as to how enjoyable the camera is to use for you personally. And ultimately, if you don't enjoy using it, it doesn't matter how good the specs are or how much money you chucked into it or how popular the brand is, you're probably never gonna want to use it, and then you're gonna end up regretting your purchase. Now, staying on the topic of getting blinded by the latest and greatest gadgets, arguably the biggest mistake I see new photographers making is only ever considering the latest camera models. This, I feel, is fairly short-sighted given that the photography market is filled with a huge number of incredible used cameras that offer fantastic value. Cameras don't just become obsolete overnight, and I should know I've tested plenty of older digital cameras here on this channel, and every camera I own currently is a used camera, and often an older model at that. A camera that was top of the line just a few years ago is still going to take amazing photos even if it is a little bit longer in the tooth. Sure, you may have to make some compromises because some of the older ones might not offer the latest and greatest features, but unless you're planning on getting into a super fast-paced medium of photography like sports, for example, or you need the best possible video capture options, most of the time older cameras will be more than up to the job. Plus, when you buy used, you're often going to get a camera that still has most of the features you need but at a fraction of the cost, and that means you can allocate more of your budget towards things like lenses, accessories, or just save some cash for a rainy day. Always check into the condition of the camera before purchasing it and make sure it's fully functional, and also look for stores that offer a decent return policy or some kind of warranty on their used gear. I've spoken about this before, but personally I tend to buy all of my cameras from either eBay or MPB, and neither of them are sponsors of this episode. They are just honestly websites that I use pretty much a weekly basis, and I use them because I know that if something goes wrong or the camera is broken or faulty in any way, there is a fairly robust returns policy in place. Now, speaking of things going wrong, can you imagine what it must feel like to lose all of the photos from a wedding shoot, or all of those treasured family photos from your recent vacation, gone in an instant? Now, as a photographer, it's less of a case of if that happens and more when it happens, because technical glitches are pretty much inevitable. I should know it's happened to me a few times throughout my career. But luckily, it's not always the end of the world, especially if you have help from today's sponsor, Wondershare Recover It. Now, whether it's a corrupted SD card, accidental deletion, or a damaged hard drive, Wondershare Recover It can bring back your lost data with ease. And they have a 95.5% success rate. This software supports over 1,000 different file formats and can recover everything from high definition video to raw image files and more in just 3 easy steps. First, just select the location of where the data loss occurred, whether that's files that were stored on an SD card, external hard drive, or even your trusted NAS storage system. The software will then perform a deep scan to locate the lost or deleted files, and during this process you can preview the found files, ensuring that you can identify exactly what you need. Finally, with a simple click, you can recover the selected files and save them back to a secure location. So the next time you need help recovering lost files, then why not use a free trial of Wondershare Recovery using the link in the video description below. Anyway, the next mistake people often make is that they spend way too much time thinking about the camera they're going to buy and not really considering the lens choices. And in a lot of cases, the lenses you buy can end up being far more important than the camera itself, but we'll touch on lenses a little later on. Now, different camera brands will use different lens mounts, so you're somewhat restricted as to which lenses will work on your camera without the use of adapters, but let's not get too sidetracked. For example, Canon currently has fewer third-party lens options available for its RF mount mirrorless cameras, and by third-party I mean brands other than Canon itself. And that's because for the longest time, Canon has not allowed other manufacturers to create lenses using their beloved RF mount. Why? Well, the company has never released an official statement on the matter, so I'd hate to sit here and speculate as to why, but if you have any ideas at all that spring to mind, let me know in the comments. I just really can't think. But in total fairness, Canon this year have finally opened up the gates and they are now allowing third-party manufacturers to start using their lens mount. But they are very far behind the other brands like Sony, Nikon, Fujifilm, Panasonic, pretty much everyone at this point. They're a little bit behind everyone. But on the other hand, to Canon's credit, their own brand lenses are incredibly high quality and you have a pretty good selection just to choose from in their little ecosystem. So this might not even bother you. You might decide that you love the cameras so much that not having a bazillion lenses to pick from really doesn't put you off. So this is exactly what I mean. You need to pick things based on your own personal needs rather than what anyone else thinks. But why should you care about lenses anyway? Surely it's the camera that matters. It's the camera that captures the images, and that's the thing that's going to catapult you into international stardom as a viral Instagram photographer, right? Well, not exactly, because as I hinted to earlier, lenses are actually what shape the image you capture. You can buy the most high-end camera body in the world, but if you're stuck with only using poor quality lenses on the front, your photos are going to suffer in more ways than one. And that segues us nicely into the next mistake, and that's spending too much money on the camera body and not leaving enough money behind to buy lenses. Now, this is something I see all of the time. People get so obsessed with buying the latest and greatest camera body, dropping thousands of dollars on it, and then they have nothing left for lenses. If you work into a budget, no matter how big or small, you're usually much better off getting a slightly cheaper camera body and then putting more of your budget into one or two higher quality lenses. Why? Well, that's because the lens actually dictates a lot more about the shooting experience and image quality than most people give credit for. It'll affect how sharp your images are, it will affect the colors, the contrast, the maximum aperture will control how much light is actually able to reach the sensor, and along with it, how pleasing the background blur is, or the bokeh. Not to mention that if the AF motor in it hunts like Elmer Fudd and sounds like a small child crying for help every time you use it, it really doesn't matter how good the camera's state-of-the-art AI-driven AF features are. You probably aren't going to be coming home with many sharp shots. To put it another way, a great lens can make even an entry-level camera shine, but a cheap lens can limit the potential of the best camera in the world. So when you're planning your budget, think of the camera and lenses more as a team, as a synergy. As scissor sisters, if you will. It's the right terminology, right? As the old adage goes, you date your camera, but you marry your lenses. Anyway, the next mistake is people just getting way too fixated on the size of the sensor. Now, there's often a lot of hype around full frame sensors. Everyone wants the biggest and best, and sure, they do have their advantages, but let me tell you now, you do not need a full frame sensor to capture great looking images. Crop sensor cameras like APS-C and Micro Four Thirds systems are more than capable of producing stunning photos, especially if you pair them with the right lenses, as we've already spoken about. Plus, crop sensor cameras are usually lighter, more affordable, smaller, and the lenses themselves are also more compact and less expensive. So if you are just getting into photography or you just want something that's versatile and portable, a crop sensor camera might be the better choice to go for. Now, that's not me saying that you should never buy a full frame camera. I own a full frame camera, but I'm just saying don't think that just because you buy a camera with a large sensor, your photos are automatically going to be the best or better than everyone else's, because it's really not that simple, unfortunately. And on that note, don't get blinded by megapixel count either. More megapixels does not automatically mean better looking images. If you don't know, megapixels simply dictate the maximum resolution of the images the camera can produce, or to put it another way, how large the end photo will appear. But larger photos doesn't always mean that they'll have more detail or they'll be sharper, because after a certain point, having more megapixels won't translate into achieving better looking photos. Sensor quality and lens quality is what matters way more. Very broadly speaking, a camera with a 16 megapixel sensor or higher will be fine for most types of work, especially if you're only ever going to upload your photos online. And if you want to learn more about the different types of sensor sizes on offer and the pros and cons of each, then I've made a whole video about it up here that you can enjoy. You're welcome.